What's up, everybody? It's Frederick Douglass Bussey. I'm glad to have you here at a random time on a Tuesday afternoon. But we're doing these lives because we want to talk about business and help you to be able to expand your thinking and how you're building your businesses. If you are doing 25 to $50,000 a month, 20K to 50K a month, maybe you're stuck in your business. Today, we're going to talk about how you can use how billionaires think about time to be able to grow and expand your business. All right, so I'm going to be moving gingerly today. I got a little injury playing ball this weekend, basketball, and so if I seem a little low key, forgive me. But I really want to talk about this because I love this idea. And 5 ways that billionaires think about time that broke entrepreneurs don't. What does that mean for you and your business, and how can you be able to use that level of thinking to be able to expand what you're doing and to be able to level up in your business? If you're doing 20 to 50K a month, even if you're doing 80 to 100K, right, there are still some ways that we need to be thinking about time, not just for ourselves as the entrepreneurs, but also in terms of our businesses, how it could be transformative for us and how we're able to grow and learn. If you look at any of the wealthiest men in the world, they always have a different way of thinking about time. Jeff Bezos, particularly, he famously has these letters that he sends out to his shareholders. And in those, he will talk about what Amazon will be doing over the next 10 years, right? And so when you look back at the letters that he was sending out 10 years ago, and even 15 and 20 years ago, they describe exactly what Amazon has and is doing even today. And that's important because if you are an entrepreneur and you're building out a business, there are the tendencies or the temptation is to fall short, right? To think about what we're doing this week or what we're doing this month. And because you're in survival mode so often, what you really find yourself doing is struggling to think about the big picture. And so the big picture seems like a dream instead of a plan, instead of a target. It feels more like a wish. And so what we want to do is we want to be able to make that shift in our minds. And how do we do that, right? So part of that is understanding the ways that entrepreneurs think about business differently than the rest of us and think about time differently than the rest of us do. So the first thing is that they think of time, right? When we're going to billionaire mode, we want to think about time as, let me put it here. Time is an asset, right? Another word for asset would be luxury. And why is that important? It's important because most of us think of time as an obstacle, right? So we think of it as something that's in the way. We think of it as, I've got to get this done and I only have this amount of time. I only have, an hour, a day, a month. We think of it in terms of a goal when we think of money. Like, I need to make $100,000 over the next year, $1 million over the next year, $10 billion over the next year, whatever the case may be. And the reason why we get stuck there is because we feel as though time is an impediment. It's an obstacle to getting what we want. It's going to take us a long time. Whereas if you think about how billionaires think, they see time as a luxury. Like, what if I had all the time in the world, right? What if I had 40 years to do this thing, 50 years to build it out? What would it look like? What do I want to do to create an enduring, lasting impression on the world? What do I need to do to be able to do that? And so they see time as an asset that's on their side. They are willing to spend to be able to do that, right? And so they will pay for the luxury of being able to spend more time. If you think about startups and things like that, what they are trying to do is they are trying to buy the runway, right? However, many entrepreneurs, when they're raising their money, they're thinking in the wrong, almost in reverse. So they're thinking of, I need $5 million to be able to build this business that will buy us a year and a half to be able to do that, right? Now, if you're a billionaire, you're thinking, how can I take this $5 million and stretch it to 30, right? What if I had 30 years to build this thing and I was able to just do that? And it's interesting the way that your mindset shifts when you're able to do that, because now you're thinking in terms of, I have the luxury of being able to build this thing out. What would I do if I could optimize all this time? What are the bells and whistles that I would put into this thing? What would I be able to build it and create around it that will make it unique and singular in its origin? And what will make this business be able to be top shelf, top of the line? And I'm going to say some things that are going to sound counterintuitive and like they contradict each other, but I want you to understand that this is a very fundamental piece in terms of how the billionaires think about time as a luxury. All right. They think of it as an asset. It's something that they want to be able to put on their side, right? Because they know that if they can wait other people out, if they can spend more money, then they can create an advantage that other people don't have. Because if most entrepreneurs are thinking about their business in terms of survival mode, I've got to be able to make it work now. I've got to be able to make it work in a year. And they're thinking about it in terms of, well, what if I had the opportunity to take 40 years to build this thing out, right? Then what could I do with that? Which relates to the second point very, very importantly, which is they think of time in decades, not years. Now, it's an asset, and if you're going to have an asset, you want it to appreciate over time. If you're thinking about building a business and you're thinking about the fact that one day you want to sell it, but you have to sell it in 3 to 5 years instead of selling it in 40 years, think about how much more valuable something could be in 40 years versus the just 1 or 2 or even 3 years. And so very often what we do is we make a lot of mistakes because we're not thinking in decades, we're thinking in years, we're thinking in months, we're thinking in weeks. And so that's a very scarcity mindset that plagues a lot of entrepreneurs. And so they struggle to be able to think in the long-term planning that they need to be able to have. When you think of time as an asset and a luxury, you start to be able to build things out with more anti-fragility, like Talib would say. And so you want to be able to build something that is going to stand the test of time. Think of it this way. Think if you're building a bridge, right? And think about if you're just crossing a river on a journey that you're never going to come back versus building a bridge that's going to stand the test of decades. How would you build that thing differently, right? And so what is more sustainable? What is more going to be more powerful and more profitable in terms of how you're building it? Think of the shift that you're able to make in your business if now you're thinking, I'm going to build this thing for the long haul. I'm thinking about this in decades. I'm not making the same mistakes. I'm not in a hurry, right? Or as I heard someone say, you can hurry, but you don't rush. And when you rush is when you make the mistakes. When you rush is when you start to strip away relationships and different things that are supposed to be powerful and make a big difference in your lives. And so you got to be thinking in billionaire mode. How can I think about this thing in decades, not in years? Now this will seem counterintuitive, but this is a really important reason why you need to be thinking like billionaires think in terms of how they build a business, because they also believe that time is, if I can spell this word, collapsible. You want to learn how to compress time. So now just because you're thinking in decades doesn't mean that you have to take decades to get it done. But if you think in decades and how you want it to be in terms of decades now, how can I collapse that time? What are the things that I can use to create more leverage, to do what I need to be able to do to make the outcome that I want come sooner into focus, right? And so what that means is that what a lot of entrepreneurs are doing, like especially if you're in the $20,000 to $50,000 a month range with your business, what you're doing is you're typically doing a lot of, if not most of, or all of the things that it takes to run your business, to be able to grow. And so because of that, there are gaps in your thinking, there are gaps in your execution, there's gaps in your strategy. You can't be able to fill all those gaps. But if you're able to think in terms of decades, now what are all the things that I would need to be able to make this thing happen? What are all the things that need to go right for me? And now if you can think about all those things, then there are no gaps because you've taken the time to really implement that. Now you're saying, okay, what do I need to put into place to collapse time, to compress that timeline, to make it happen even faster, right? Who are the people that I need to have? What are the resources I need to be able to put in place? What are the tools that are at my disposal now that maybe weren't available even a year or 10 years ago? What are the things that might need to be in place in 10 or 15 years that I could create and build now, or I have people that have access to be able to do those things now? I think about Elon Musk, right? Because Elon knew I need to be able to have a more sustainable battery for the Tesla. So what I need to do, I need to be able to build a factory that can build these. So the Gigafactory is one of those elements that he had to build in place, right? To collapse time, to be able to, instead of looking at the horizon about how the infrastructure was to be able to build the electric grid and things of that nature for Tesla, he said, I got to be able to build it faster. And so he put those things in place. Now, yes, he's a billionaire there, but if you think like a billionaire, you can often come up with either the people or resources or partnerships that can align you with people to be able to make these things happen that much faster. And that's really important. The third thing that I want to talk about this is that they are willing to, I'm going to run out of space here. I'm also going to run out of letters. They are willing to pay for speed. Here's why that's important. Most times, entrepreneurs, especially when you are just starting out, when you have hit the six-figure mark, or maybe when you're at or around $1 million a year, 20 to 50K a month, or whatever the case may be, what you're doing is you're thinking about money as a resource that has to be hoarded. You have to save it. You've got to be wise with it. And there's nothing wrong with being wise, but the way that you think about the money that you're investing in your business is really, really important. And one of the things you want to be able to do is not think of money as something that has to be saved so I can work longer, but how do I buy speed in my business so that I can collapse time, right? Time is collapsed. These decades turn into weeks or a year when you are able to figure out how I can be more efficient, how I can create revenue faster, how I can scale faster, but safely, right? So when we're talking about paying for speed, think about it when you're buying a car. If I need to get somewhere faster, right, I'm going to choose a vehicle that's going to get me according to my destination much faster than I normally would. For instance, if I want to walk across the street, if I want to go across the street, I can just walk, right? But if I want to go across up the street, then I might use a bike. If I need to go across town, then I might use a car or a bus. If I need to go across town and it's a 30-minute drive, I'm not going to take a bus because a bus, although I pay for speed, is not going to get me there in 30 minutes. It might take me an hour. If I drive a car, I can get there in 25, right? And so then the type of car that I'm going to use, I wanted something that's going to be faster, nimble, it's not going to get stuck in traffic. It's not going to break down on me. So I need to be able to pay for those efficiencies in my business to be able to grow it at the rate that I need to. I want to collapse time, and time is a measurement for speed, or speed is a measurement for time and distance, right? So how far away is that thing? How long will it take me to get there? All right, that's the target. What can I buy? Who can I pay? What resource can I install in my business to be able to help it to grow faster? I'll pay for speed. And the last thing you want to talk about is that you want to pay for time with leverage. Really, actually, I want to use a different word. I have this big old board and I still run out of space, but here it is. Systems. You want to scale time with systems. That sounds like the same thing. It's very similar related to speed, but here's where you want to be able to do it. A system is something that is repeatable and predictable, right? So I have an input that creates an output. In other words, a recipe for baking a cake is a system, right? I've got a certain temperature I have to turn the oven on to. I'm going to have a certain consistency that I want to bake the to create the batter. I need so many eggs, so much flour or cake mix, whatever the case may be. If I need nutmeg, cinnamon, whatever those elements are going to be put in place, I've got that regimented down so that every time I want to bake this cake, I follow this system, this process that creates the same cake every single time. Think about McDonald's or someone like that. You've got a franchise that they're able to sell because what they are doing is they are selling a system. They're selling a system that says that I can create a hamburger and get people in a meal. I can get them a meal in a minute and a half, 90 seconds, 60 seconds or less. If you can do that, now what you can do is you can say, I can serve X amount of customers an hour, X amount of customers a day, per week, per year, which should equal a certain amount of revenue. And then you're able to tweak the system, add other elements to it to scale it, but it's predictable and repeatable. And that's important because you cannot collapse time in decades if you have inconsistencies, if it's all about you. And very often what entrepreneurs are doing, especially when you're 20, 30, 50K a month, is that if you're doing all the things, you are the system, you are the breakdown, you are the bottleneck. You can't scale you. There's only one of you, and each person only has 24 hours in a day, which means that you have 24 hours to get all the things done, and then you have to start all over again. But that's not sustainable because how many all-nighters can you pull, right? How many weeks can you go without rest? How many weeks can you go without all the things that a human being needs? Interaction with their family, their loved ones, rest, recovery, eating food, being able to think strategically, being able to take a vacation and relax and come back fresh. All of those things are important, and we don't think about those extracurricular things because they don't go on inside our business, but they're necessary for us to be able to grow and to scale. So these are the 5 things, right? When we're going to tap into billionaire mode, we want to think about time as a luxury or an asset. We want to think in decades instead of years. We want to make sure that we're thinking about time, understand it's collapsible. We can compress the timeline to get where we want to be faster. And to get there faster, we want to pay for speed. Speed is not something that is a hindrance to us. It is not something that is an expense. It's necessary. We need that to be able to get there where we want to go faster. And lastly, we need a system that's going to be able to help us to do that so we can tap into it. I don't see any questions for those of you who are watching live on Facebook. We're also on YouTube and LinkedIn. But I appreciate those of you who checked in, you dropped a like, or whatever the case may be. Make sure you subscribe, you like the channel. If you're not a member of the 7-Figure Circle, we're also broadcasting live in the Facebook group. Check that out as well. I'll drop that link below here so you can make sure that you see it. I want to make sure that you all understand that we're here. We're here every day doing live in some capacity, whether it's the podcast, the Power Lunch podcast, or the Breaking Orbit podcast. But if you're an entrepreneur and you are in the 20K to 50K range, if you are in the 7-figure range and you're still kind of stuck and you're not able to get the momentum that you want, I would encourage you to drop a comment below, send us a message, let us know how we can talk. And we'll see if our program is a good fit for you to be able to support you in what you're doing. We're doing a lot of live trainings in the Facebook group, 7-Figure Circle $1 Million Mastermind group. It's a great place for entrepreneurs to come. We'll be doing some more master classes live as well to be able to support you in what you've got going on. Look, you don't have to be stuck. You don't have to be burning yourself out. You don't have to feel like you are building a sand castle that washes away every night when you finally stagger off to bed or you make it home. You can build something that is sustainable, that is impactful, that is bigger than you, and that carries the impact that you know you were meant to create in this world. And freedom is not just the opportunity to be able to run your own business or have your own business. Freedom is the opportunity to do things on your terms. And if you are not managing your business, but your business is managing you, if you are not running your business, but your business is running you, if you do not own your time, but your time owns you and tells you what to do and where to go, maybe we should talk. With that being said, I'm Frederick Douglass Bussey. I really appreciate you taking the time to spend with us today. Hopefully you are now entering billionaire mode in terms of how you think about your business. I'm Frederick Douglass Bussey, icon status, ever forward.